Welcome to my channel, The Good Book Tales. In today's video, we're diving into a question that might change the way you see yourself, your choices, and even the invisible battles happening around you. Who really owns your mind? This isn't just a question about habits, technology, or influence. It's about a deeper, unseen struggle that touches every part of your life. What if I told you that there's a war being fought right now, inside your thoughts, inside your heart? And most people don't even realize it's happening. This isn't a war with tanks or weapons. It's a spiritual war, and it changes everything. Think about the last time you made a decision you weren't proud of. Was it really just you making that choice? Or was there something whispering in the background, nudging you, steering your emotions, playing with your fears? We live in a world where every day our attention is pulled in 1,000 directions. Social media, endless notifications, news headlines, advertisements that seem to know exactly what we want before we even search for it. But behind all that noise, there's something more dangerous than distraction. There are forces, ancient, unseen, that fight to claim your mind. Some call it light versus darkness. Others call it truth versus deception. But no matter the name, the struggle is real, and whether you notice it or not, you are a player in it. In this story, we'll follow the journey of ordinary people who find themselves caught in this invisible conflict. They're not superheroes, not saints, just regular souls like you and me, trying to figure out why their thoughts don't always feel like their own, why certain patterns keep repeating, why peace seems so hard to hold on to. And as their paths unfold, a startling question rises to the surface. If you're not in control of your mind, then who is? The stakes couldn't be higher. Because the one who wins the battle for your mind doesn't just shape your choices today, they shape your destiny. And here's where the suspense deepens. The weapons in this war are not what you expect. They don't sound like explosions. They sound like doubt, fear, temptation, confusion. They come as whispers, distractions, sudden anger, or even subtle promises of comfort. And while one side fights to enslave, the other fights to set you free. But freedom always comes with a cost. So, as we step deeper into this story, I invite you to look closely, not just at the characters you'll meet along the way, but at yourself. Because this war isn't out there somewhere. It's here, right now, inside the space between your thoughts. And if you've ever felt torn between two voices, one pulling you toward light and peace, the other toward chaos, you've already experienced the battlefield firsthand. But here's the mystery. Not everyone wants you to know about this war. In fact, the greatest advantage the enemy has is convincing people it doesn't even exist. That way, the fight continues in silence, and the mind is taken without resistance. So, the real question becomes, when the truth finally reveals itself, when the curtain is pulled back, will you be strong enough to see which voice has been guiding you all along? Stay with me, because this is only the beginning. The journey we're about to take together will uncover secrets hidden in plain sight. But before the story unfolds, ask yourself one last time, who owns your mind? Long before you and I were even born, people asked the same question that lingers today. Why do we think the way we do, and why do we sometimes feel like we're not in control of our own choices? In ancient times, this wasn't brushed off as stress or simple distraction. They believed the mind was a battlefield, a sacred space where unseen powers tried to leave their mark. They saw every thought, every emotion, every sudden urge as a sign of something greater at play. And whether they called it good and evil, light and darkness, or spirit and shadow, they understood that the struggle inside the human mind was not a small one. It was the struggle that defined life itself. Now imagine an ordinary man named Daniel. He wasn't a prophet or a priest, just someone like us, trying to get through each day. He woke up each morning feeling that tug of war inside his head. Some days, he felt an unusual peace, like the air itself was whispering hope into his heart. Other days, it was as if a heavy weight pressed down on his chest, making him doubt every step he took. Friends noticed the changes too. Sometimes he seemed alive with clarity, and other times he was distant, lost in thoughts he couldn't even explain. And Daniel began to wonder, are these thoughts really mine? Or is someone or something trying to claim them? This is where the story gets unsettling, because Daniel's questions are not his alone. If you've ever felt pulled in two directions at once, if you've ever heard that quiet voice saying, "Don't give up," only to hear another voice whisper, "You're not enough," then you know exactly the kind of war he was facing. And while the world around him looked ordinary, people scrolling on phones, cars moving down busy streets, the quiet hum of everyday life, he started noticing cracks in the picture. Little signs that something was wrong, that the battle wasn't just inside him, but all around. The conflict wasn't visible to the eye, but it showed itself in choices. A kind word held back, a lie told without thought, a sudden flash of anger that felt almost foreign, like it didn't even belong to him. These weren't just coincidences. They were strategies, moves made on a board most people never see. And Daniel, like so many of us, was caught right in the middle of it. But here's the mystery. If the war for the mind is real, then who benefits from controlling it? And why does it matter so much who wins? The answers to those questions are closer than you think, but uncovering them might shake everything you believe about freedom, truth, and the choices you make every single day. Daniel's struggle grew sharper as days passed. It wasn't just random thoughts anymore, it was patterns. At work, he found himself zoning out, replaying arguments in his head that never happened. On the train ride home, he caught himself staring at strangers and wondering why their faces felt familiar, as if he had seen them in dreams. The more he paid attention, the more he realized the conflict wasn't just inside him, it seemed to spill into the world around him. One night, Daniel confided in his friend Maya, someone who carried her own quiet battles. She admitted she felt the same unseen pressure, like invisible strings tugging at her decisions. Some days, she said, it felt like her joy was stolen before she even woke up. Other days, she sensed a strength that didn't seem to come from her at all. Their conversations opened a doorway neither expected. They began to see their lives not as isolated struggles, but as part of something larger, a war that targeted thoughts, emotions, even dreams. What unsettled Daniel most was how subtle it all was. Nobody else seemed to notice. The people around him laughed, worked, and scrolled through their phones as if nothing strange existed. But Daniel and Maya began spotting signs. A sudden heaviness in the air during arguments, or an unusual calm in moments when they chose kindness over anger. The patterns were real. Something wanted to push them toward fear, division, and despair, while something else quietly urged them toward peace, courage, and truth. Yet, the more aware they became, the more intense the pressure grew. The conflict wasn't just testing their strength, it was testing their loyalty. And the question loomed larger than ever. Whose voice would they choose to follow when the real battle finally revealed itself? The nights grew heavier for Daniel and Maya. Sleep no longer brought rest. Their dreams were filled with strange images, doors they couldn't open, voices calling their names from the shadows, and flashes of light that disappeared the moment they reached for it. Each morning, they woke with the same question echoing in their minds. Who owns your thoughts when you're not even awake? Daniel started noticing something chilling. Whenever he tried to focus on peace, a sudden wave of distraction would crash in. His phone would buzz, old memories of failure would surface, or a subtle whisper of doubt would break his concentration. Maya, too, felt it. The moment she tried to choose hope, A sharp fear of being alone would strike her heart. It wasn't just coincidence anymore. It was too precise, too calculated. It felt like every time they leaned toward light, something pushed back harder, almost as if the war itself didn't want to lose ground. One evening, as they sat in a quiet cafe, the tension between them and the world around them reached its peak. The air seemed charged, heavy, like the calm before a storm. Daniel leaned forward and whispered, "Do you ever feel like we're being watched? Not by people, but by something that knows exactly what we're thinking?" Maya didn't answer right away, but the look in her eyes told him everything. She felt it too. The cafe buzzed with normal chatter, yet for them, the ordinary world had become a battlefield hidden in plain sight. They knew a choice was coming, a moment when the voices would demand an answer. Every step they took, every thought they entertained, was pulling them closer to that unseen climax. And when it arrived, there would be no turning back. The moment Daniel and Maya left the cafe, the night felt different. The street was quiet, almost too quiet, as if the city itself was holding its breath. Streetlights flickered faintly, and the shadows seemed to stretch longer than usual. They walked side by side, but neither spoke. Both could feel it, the weight of something unseen pressing closer. And then, without warning, the twist they never expected revealed itself. As they passed a bookstore, the door creaked open though no one touched it. A gust of cold air swept across their faces, carrying with it the faint sound of whispers. It wasn't the chatter of customers, it was something else. The voices spoke words neither of them could fully understand, but the intent was clear. A call, a pull, a demand for attention. Daniel froze, staring through the glass, and what he saw made his heart race. Inside, the reflection in the mirror wasn't his own. It was him, but darker. A version of himself that carried every failure, every regret, every selfish thought he had ever tried to bury. And the reflection was smiling. Maya tugged at his arm, but when she glanced at the glass, she saw something different. It wasn't her reflection at all. It was her mother, the one who had left when she was a child, standing there with a look of cold disappointment. The mirror didn't just show images, it reached deep into their wounds, exposing the pain they thought they had hidden. That was the second twist. This war for the mind wasn't only fought with whispers and distractions. It fought with memories, with guilt, with every scar the heart carried. The realization hit them hard. The battle wasn't just external, it was personal. Every weakness, every doubt, every wound from the past could be used as a weapon. And the enemy knew exactly where to strike. The stakes were no longer just about resisting temptation or silencing fear. It was about facing the darkest parts of themselves, parts they weren't ready to confront. The voices grew louder now, urging them to step inside, to give in, to believe the lies. The street around them blurred, the world seeming to fade into the background. Daniel and Maya clung to each other, knowing they stood on the edge of something far greater than they had imagined. The war for their minds had taken a new turn, and the line between reality and illusion was breaking. Daniel and Maya stood frozen before the glass, their reflections no longer their own, but twisted versions born from fear and regret. The whispers grew into a roar, urging them to surrender, to believe the darkness was who they truly were. For a moment, Daniel felt himself slipping. The image in the mirror taunted him with every wrong choice he had ever made, convincing him he was nothing more than his failures. His chest tightened, and his breath came shallow. He thought he was losing. But then Maya reached for his hand. Her grip was firm, trembling, yet steady enough to anchor him. She whispered, "This isn't who we are." The words, simple yet powerful, cut through the noise. Daniel felt a spark within him. Small, fragile, but real. He turned his eyes from the reflection and chose to look at Maya instead. In that instant, the glass cracked, a sharp sound slicing through the night. The reflection screamed as if wounded, fragments of shadow shattering into pieces. The street seemed to breathe again. The roar faded into silence, and the air felt lighter, as though a heavy curtain had finally been lifted. Daniel and Maya had not won by force, but by refusing to believe the lies. The climax had come not in fighting the enemy, but in realizing the true battleground was their perception of themselves. For the first time, they understood. The war for the mind is fought with truth, and victory comes by choosing which voice to trust. But just as relief settled in, the unexpected twist revealed itself. As the shards of glass scattered across the ground, they noticed one fragment hadn't dissolved into shadow. Instead, it glowed faintly, pulsing like a heartbeat. Daniel bent to pick it up, and the instant his fingers touched it, a chill ran through his body. Inside the shard was not darkness, but light. A voice, calm and steady, whispered from within, "This is only the beginning." The reflection had not been destroyed entirely. It had transformed. The battle they thought was ending was in fact opening a new door, a deeper level of the war they hadn't yet glimpsed. And though they had faced their fears tonight, the real question lingered heavier than ever. If the war for the mind had only begun, what greater truths and greater battles still lay ahead? Daniel held the glowing shard in his hand, feeling its steady pulse echo through his chest. For a long moment, he and Maya stood in silence, unsure of what it meant. The mirror was gone, the shadows had vanished, yet this fragment remained, a reminder that the battle was not over, but had simply changed form. They both understood something important that night. The war for the mind would not always come as loud whispers or haunting reflections. Sometimes it would be quiet, subtle, woven into everyday choices. And the real power lay not in trying to escape the battle, but in choosing which voice to follow, moment by moment. Walking home together, Daniel felt lighter. He no longer saw himself only through the lens of failure. The lies that had weighed on him for years had been exposed, and for the first time, he realized he didn't have to live under their control. Maya, too, carried a new strength. The pain of her past, the image of her mother's disappointment, no longer held the same grip over her heart. She understood now that memories could wound, but they could also teach, and in choosing not to be defined by them, she found freedom. Their journey didn't end in that cafe or on that dark street. The true resolution came in how they decided to live afterward. They learned to guard their thoughts, to notice when fear or doubt tried to creep in, and to replace those voices with truth, courage, and hope. They knew the war for the mind was ongoing, but they also knew they weren't powerless. Awareness was their shield, and choice was their weapon. And this is where the story meets you. Because Daniel and Maya's struggle is not theirs alone. It's ours. Every day, you and I face the same subtle war. Distractions, doubts, temptations, and lies all fight for our attention, trying to shape who we are and where we're headed. But just like them, we have the power to choose which voice defines us. We can let fear take over, or we can hold on to truth that brings peace and freedom. So the question remains, not as a riddle, but as an invitation. Who owns your mind? The answer isn't hidden in shadows or mirrors. It's written in the choices you make every single day. And maybe, just maybe, that choice changes everything.